Great, thanks everyone. So I think we'll make a start now. Really excited to introduce you to this webinar today on neurodiversity in the workplace. Just to introduce myself, I'm James Cusack. I'm the Chief Executive of Autistica. For those of you that aren't familiar with Autistica, Autistica is the UK's autism research charity. And what we try to do is to create breakthroughs which will enable autistic people to live happier, healthier, and longer lives. And we do that through funding and shaping research, shaping policy, and sharing the latest evidence-based information with autistic people, families, and other key stakeholders. Autistica really tries to think about funding and supporting research, which ultimately makes the biggest difference to the lives of autistic people. And that can mean making sure that autistic people get the right support from day one, to ensure that they have support around issues which we know are common to them, such as anxiety, to ensure their health needs are addressed, to ensure that attitudes to autism are appropriate, and to ensure that public spaces are more accessible. But one of the things that we're really also interested in is employment. And we're interested in employment because we know, according to statistics from the Office for National Statistics, that only 21.7% of autistic people are in employment. And we know that that number is really low. It's low compared to disabled people and the general population. And we also know that this figure also applies to autistic graduates as well, where we see quite, in relative terms, lower numbers of autistic people in full-time employment. So there's a huge amount of work to do to try and change that, but it's also a huge opportunity for organisations to embrace autistic talent and to embrace neurodiversity, which is to say the fact that autistic people think about and see the world in a different way. So we're really fortunate today to have an excellent lineup of speakers to think about that and to talk about this topic. So we have Berta Nurdini, who is our corporate partnership manager at Autistica. We have Craig Hall, who's our head of corporate charity partnerships at Fujitsu, and we're really excited to have a really close relationship with Fujitsu at Autistica. We have Rob Losby, who is a customer solutions architect at Fujitsu. We have Paul Clayton, who works system support at Fujitsu, and we have Rob Dryden, who is a development service lead at Fujitsu. So they're going to all be sharing their perspectives on looking at this topic and looking at neurodiversity in the workplace. So first of all, really excited to hand over to Berta, who will be talking about the work that we do through an initiative called DARE.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's great to see you all here. So my name is Berta Nurdini, and I'm the corporate partnership manager here at Autistica. I'm here today to talk about DARE and the work we've been doing with Fujitsu around neurodiversity in the workplace. So just to give you an overview, DARE is a collaboration between Autistica and UCL aimed at providing research-informed guidance on best practice for employment for a neurodiverse workforce. This is a really important project for us, as James said, because the employment rates for autistic people are much lower than for non-autistic people. In fact, recent figures have shown that the rates are lower than for any other disability groups. And we know that that just doesn't make sense, because we know that many autistic people want to work and have many skills and abilities which can be utilized and contribute in the workplace. So there are clearly many barriers to employment and neurodiversity. And today I'm going to talk through some of them. And they include lack of evidence projects. So even though many people offer support and evidence in this area, there's actually very little research at the moment to what works and what doesn't. And that's usually interlinked with the lack of long-term projects. And there is a clear need for large numbers and long-term projects. There's also lack of bespoke approach that can give companies an independent audit of what is working well and what needs some improvement, so then they can get bespoke recommendations. Because each company is different and they have different culture, policies, and we need to work with companies in order to give them the best bespoke recommendations that they can get around neurodiversity. And there's a need that's actually really important. So there's a need for more autistic expertise and advice on advisory boards. And that's why we created DARE. We created DARE with the aim to drive sustainable autistic employment, improve autistic well-being, and support of autistic talent. We think that getting a job is just the beginning, and the real work starts after that process. And we've done that with over 2,000 participants that have taken part so far in DARE, and 500 of those participants were autistic. The three main pillars that DARE focuses are the recruitment processes, so improving recruitment processes, workplace adjustments, and camouflaging behavior in the workplace. And I'm delighted to say that we've been working with Fujitsu in all three. As part of our partnership with Fujitsu, we decided to introduce DARE to Fujitsu and work together in developing a bespoke survey to try and understand the experiences of employees at Fujitsu. So we had an incredible engagement. We had about 900 people who engaged with the survey, and around 16% of those participants reported being neurodivergent, and a further 22% reported a mental health condition such as anxiety and depression. The rates are slightly higher than for the general population, where 15% are neurodivergent and 14.7% have a mental health conditions. Some of the results we got from the report and some of the main aims of the survey were to understand the culture at Fujitsu and how that organizational culture relates to neurodiversity. So when it came to attitude towards neurodiversity at Fujitsu, survey respondents painted a very mixed picture. Few agreed that their colleagues had high levels of knowledge around neurodiversity, or that it was easy to find information within Fujitsu about supporting neurodivergent employees. However, there was recognition that the company was moving in the right direction, with around a third respondents confirming that Fujitsu is consistently improving its knowledge around neurodiversity, and that if a neurodivergent person was to join the company, that would be well supported and understood by others. As I said earlier, the recruitment process is just the beginning. For us at Autistica, and especially for DARE, it's really important to understand and make all the necessary adjustments to make sure that we retain neurodiverse staff. And that's what we ask staff if they have ever requested a workplace adjustments. And around 35% of those who answered the question said that they have requested an adjustment, and a majority of 78% had adjustments in place immediately, or 1 or 2 to 3 months after being requested. And these adjustments can vary from, hybrid working, flexible working, adjustments to change the equipment such as screens, noise cancelling headphones. And it is very important for us to take staff's opinion on the processes and their opinions on what they would like to improve within their company. And regarding ways in which culture at Fujitsu could be improved, respondents indicated that they would like their colleagues to be more open-minded, knowledgeable, understanding about diversity. Another issue that was highlighted was the importance of clear communication from colleagues and leadership, and the need for more centralized dissemination pathways, while it's acknowledging the ongoing efforts within Fujitsu. They felt that they needed more clarity around neurodiversity definitions and the use of neurodiversity more when speaking around diversity and inclusion. A number of employees felt that a clear outline of company background, culture, and policy and practices should be given to new starters during the onboarding process. This data led to 5 main recommendations, though I must say that many felt positive about the company. We suggested that these amendments would improve the experiences of neurodivergent employees within Fujitsu. And these recommendations included increased knowledge around neurodiversity, so a training to be provided to all staff, so colleagues would be more understanding and would have more knowledge around neurodiversity and how can they support their colleagues. Second was around accessible information. We suggested that information regarding how to support neurodivergent employees could be more accessible and more centralized. The other one was around clarity during onboarding. So we believe that it's really important for Fujitsu to include that information when onboarding new staff about the company culture, norms, practices, and provide to employees during that process. Another recommendation was around improved communication for existing employees. So we suggested clear pathways for disseminating information about organizational changes and facilitation of dialogue between employees and Fujitsu leadership. The last one, but probably the most important one, was around valuing neurodiversity. We suggest that messaging around neurodiversity should include explicit mention of neurodiversity and get this conversation started around neurodiversity and the positive impact of hiring neurodivergent staff has on companies. And I'm really pleased to say that we have already started to implement those changes. To be more precise, Fujitsu has already started to implement those changes. We have moved to the phase 2 of the DARE project, where we are currently training all staff, providing training to all staff within Fujitsu. We are also in the process of developing a bespoke HR training to improve their recruitment processes, and also working with our partners at UCL to offer Fujitsu bespoke advice on how can they work out those changes and change their practices. I don't want to talk much about Fujitsu because we have the Fujitsu team here who can best explain the work we've been doing and how they've implemented these changes. We have a Q&A session in the end. Please feel free to ask us any questions, or you can just reach out to us personally if you want to know more about DARE. I'll leave it to Craig Hall from Fujitsu to tell us more about the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Berta. So good morning, everybody. So my name's Craig Hall. So I head up our corporate charity partnerships here at Fujitsu. So about 10 years ago now, as part of our responsible business strategy, we decided to make the decision to focus all our efforts to one specific charity for 2 years. Our first charity partnership was with Shelter, the homeless charity. We then moved on to working with Action for Children for a further 2 years. And then on to Macmillan. And then back in 2018, we decided to focus our efforts more to kind of smaller charities. So as part of the selection process, we looked at focusing just on smaller charities. As part of the process, we kind of put it out to an employee vote. And then back in 2018, in the October, when we did the employee vote, Autistica was selected as our new charity partner. So we kicked off back in 2019 with a clear strategy of how we could A, raise awareness for the charity, B, to do some fundraising, and then C, to kind of look at a pro bono project where we could help and make a transformational change for the charity. The first 2 years were kind of incredible. We covered loads of different activities. We did lots of different fundraising. We also sponsored Autistic's research conference and sponsored their festival as well, which was something that our employees were kind of really involved with and participated as well. I would say that from an employee's perspective, working with Autistica, we really saw that actually a lot of our employees themselves were autistic, or they had connections through family and friends, which again, I think helps resonated throughout Fujitsu. We had over 40 charity champions, which were based across the whole of the UK, which is the most that we've ever had for any of our partnerships. So it really, we could really see within the organisation that people wanted to kind of reach out, wanted to help raise awareness, and also raise some money as well for the charity over the 2 years. Some of the other activities that we've done, so we wanted to kind of upskill Autistica. Obviously, being a small charity, we've got some great people within our business, and they wanted to share their skills and expertise. So we've done some training, we've done some marketing expertise workshops, we've done some lean and agile training as well for Autistica colleagues, which I think has made a kind of a real big difference to them over the 2 years. Some of the other great stuff that we've done, we sponsored a stall at our Fujitsu annual conference, where we looked at how we could improve ways for kind of meetings and also interview processes. So this was showcased for all of our customers within Fujitsu. Over the 2 years, we raised £150,000 from various fundraising activities, from runs, from cake sales. We even had people doing canal rowing and stuff. So it's been fantastic that we've been able to do that. Our defence team had a Christmas ball, which they raised at £10,000. Which again was a fantastic achievement. But also for our new graduates and apprentices, we did what was called our paperclip challenge, which is again an innovative experience for the new starters to kind of go from a paperclip and get more different items which they could raise money through. So that was another fantastic achievement. I guess to culminate over the last 2 years, on Friday last week, we were actually awarded a Third Sector Charity Partnership of the Year award, which was absolutely incredible for us. It's something that we were blown away by, but it was obviously seen by the 50 judges that we've done some fantastic stuff with Autistica over the 2 years. In terms of the pro bono project, so we collaborated with the Alan Turing Institute, and we were focusing on how to make the world more accessible for autistic people. So the platform itself was sort of focusing on how to navigate around public places for those who find it difficult. And this was a strategic priority for many autistic people, so that we used some of our developers from in Fujitsu and a project team. We also ran workshops with the autistic community to better understand the barriers and how that could collaborate to kind of grow this platform going forward. So that was a huge activity that we did, and very rewarding for our staff as well. Many of those that sort of put themselves forward, kind of wanted to make that difference really. So really, really good. During the lockdown, we offered online training webinars to Autistic employees to kind of help skill their relationship management, again, which was something that, we've sort of developed over time. One of the things that I really like about our partnership with Autistica is it's very organic. We kind of look at different areas that are challenging for the business and how we can support that. So one of the things was in terms of their office space. We were able to get some of our engineers to go in and provide new widescreen monitors and technical equipment for their staff. So again, it's something that we were able to do because we've got such a great relationship working together. In terms of the actual conference as well, so it was the first time that this was done digitally, so again we helped to support that. We did stuff around live streaming and made sure that the recordings of the conferences video sessions were available to others afterwards. So yeah, that's kind of it from me in terms of the partnership. I'm going to hand over to Rob now.
So I'm Rob Loseby. As I was introduced, I'm a custom solution architect, but I'm also have the privilege and honour of being the chair of Ability Matters, which is our employee resources group that supports people with neurodiverse conditions, disabilities, life-changing and life-limiting conditions. And I'm also a line manager which I'll explain why that's relevant in a minute. So with DARE, one of the questions is, why employ autistic talent? That's the wrong question. The actual question is, why wouldn't you employ people with autistic talent? Why wouldn't you want someone who has excellent focus and great logical abilities? You know, why wouldn't you want somebody who's high performing? You know, superior attention to detail. I'm terrible. I go for the 80% solution. That's good enough for me. But a lot of the times in highly technical areas, you want someone who has the real attention to detail. So my team that I manage, I have 30 individuals, and they're a high performing team. And within my team, I do have people who are autistic. And I've managed quite a few people who are autistic over the years. And some people say, well, how do you get them to be a high performing team? Well, you just treat them the same as everybody else. You let them work where their skills are. So if they're very good at an activity, you try to move them into that so that they can actually perform really high. At the end of the day, let's be quite blunt about it. There's a business benefit. Why wouldn't you want somebody who is really good at their job to actually be able to high perform, which supports your business? You know, it makes business sense. So there is that. So workplace adjustments. We've actually changed the way we do workplace adjustments so that they're done centrally now, so that we can actually deliver these very quickly. So that when people are onboarded, we actually get the assessment done before they join the company. So they can actually join and then actually start working straight away. Now, we haven't got it perfect. There are little bumps in the road as always, but we try to ensure that people have the equipment that allows them to perform. And as Craig was saying, and Bertha, some of the workplace adjustments don't have to be really difficult. Allowing somebody to travel in, not at peak time, you know, so they can travel in earlier or leave later, so they don't like actually going in the rush hour. And at the minute, let's be truthful, none of us like being going in the rush hour. I was on the train last week for the first time in 18 months. And I was sat there with my mask on, etc., because I follow the rules. I was looking around thinking, I don't like this, there's people without masks on. So that sort of thing. You know, allowing them to use taxis so that they don't have to use public transport if they're in London, that sort of thing. It's very, very simple. And we've also taken it a bit further within Fujitsu. So we didn't really have an accessibility policy for designing our buildings. So we decided that we were going to look at that. And we weren't just going to do it for people with physical disabilities. We wanted to be inclusive for everybody. So now whenever we do an update on one of our buildings, we incorporate a quiet room so that it has nice, quiet facilities. You can control the light coming in, so it's not too harsh, it's not too bright. We look at the lighting so that, obviously, as you're probably aware, people with autism can actually pick up on the frequencies of the lights. So that we try to do that so it doesn't affect them. They have soft lighting on the desks so that they can go in and they can perform. And again, it's nice to have, but there's a business reason for it. Why wouldn't you want to empower people to actually soar and achieve and work to the best of their abilities? I do a lot of coaching and mentoring for people with autism within Fujitsu. And this actually involves me possibly working with their line managers or HR to make sure that they're moved into the position where they can actually perform. And again, coaching the line managers so that they're able to support people. Within Fujitsu, we do have a disability passport. We're actually changing the name to be Completely You passport, because why wouldn't you want to be able to be completely you at work? And it allows you to actually capture what your adjustments are or your conditions. So myself, I'm dyslexic, dyspraxic, dyscalculus and diabetes. So I say I'm better than everyone else because I'm not 3D, I'm 4D. I actually go to the fourth dimension. I'm partially sighted, and actually just to explain that has just taken 20 seconds. But if I change line managers to go through that and actually to explain that my eye condition, if you Google it, comes up as a First Nation village in Canada and doesn't tell you what it is, etc., takes a lot of time. So with the passport, we actually, excuse me, just moved my cap, allows us to share what the workplace adjustments are so that anybody, you don't have to keep explaining it. So that if you move line managers, you get the support you need and you see what's in place. So it could be, I need to sit by a desk by this window and I need to sit here, etc., because I can't hear the drinks machine gurgling. And you might think, well, you know, that's not a problem. We can do that. But he had to do that all the while. That can be a bit tedious and also frustrating for the individual. And again, it's we include in there that if they need to move desks, that the person is notified in a maximum amount of time so they can go and see where their new desk is. So there's not just a case of you're moving now, so they can see where their desk is. They can get to used to it and see who they're going to be sitting around. So it's very, very simple objects to do. And it also might be you bring them in to the business. So you do a work placement instead of actually a formal interview. You know, is the company right for them and for you? It may be that the person that you're bringing on board will say, actually, it's not for me. So you haven't lost anything. Or it could be, we brought you in on this position, but you know what? You're cracking at doing that. So we're going to move you to, we want you to go into that so you can be one of our high performers. So it all comes back to supporting each other, because you're supporting the individual so that they're high performing, and then they're supporting you and the bottom dollar, etc., by them being high performing. And also they're a joy to work with. You know, people who with neurodiverse conditions, they're just like everybody else. It always makes me laugh when you speak to people and say, I've met someone who's autistic. Yeah, you've met somebody. Everybody, we are all the same, and we treat each other the same, and we all work together. So we do the workplace adjustments in place so that they can actually perform and work better. And we can then actually help and get benefit from them. So that's all I've got to say on this point. But all I would finally say, it wasn't the last thing I was going to say, is why wouldn't you? You know, you want a high performing business, you want a high performing team, actually recruit somebody who has a neurodiverse condition. You'll actually be find them outstanding to work with. So thank you very much. And I will now hand over to Robin, who is going to talk about the business adjustment and neurodiverse talent recognition. So over to you, Robin.
Thanks very much, Rob. Yes, so just to introduce myself, I'm Robin Dryden. I am a development as a service lead and a charity champion for Autistica, and gained an awful lot of benefit from my involvement over the last nearly 3 years that we've had as a charity partner. We've continued our fundraising activities. Craig mentioned quite a lot of things we've done. We tried to come up with ways of doing it over the COVID lockdowns as well. So we've had quizzes and game-a-thons and raffles and last one standing football predictions and all sorts of things. So we've looked to keep the awareness of our partnership around our colleagues. Like Rob, I'm also a line manager, and again, like Rob, I've done my best to offer support to colleagues and their managers regarding neurodiverse conditions and autistic spectrum condition. In that, I've given talks to teams, a number of Fujitsu sites about supporting colleagues with autistic spectrum, and to help dispel some of the myths, if you like, some of the stigma around neurodiversity. As a manager of an autistic person, the first thing you need to do is, if they want to find out if they want to share their condition with their colleagues or not, and work out a good way of conveying that to their colleagues. As Rob highlighted, everyone is unique. There's no sort of one size fits all adjustment that you can apply to everyone. And again, as Rob highlighted, Fujitsu has a number of ways of supporting colleagues. Rob mentioned the Ability Passport. We have a really good employee assistance program, and we use occupational health recommendations for individuals to help find what the right support measures we can put in place to ensure that they can excel in the workplace. Again, would look at things like flexible working. Rob highlighted the quiet rooms we're putting in at offices, which have been a real benefit to a number of people, those who are currently working in the offices. But it can be, little things from like noise cancelling headphones, or screen readers and software to adjust your screens and things. So what's important to do is find what works with the individual and maintain an ongoing dialogue with that individual and their manager to ensure that they are getting the support that they need. As Berta mentioned with the DARE survey, recruitment's an important thing, and certainly we've been giving advice to managers about how questions should be asked. Certainly avoid the curse of open questions. Use the W's: who, what, when, and why. And certainly tailor. We've also been tailoring our job descriptions to suit the skills of individuals with autistic spectrum condition. For individuals in roles, we're looking to make sure we meet their learning pathways, so that they can gain the skills and experience they need to do the job well. Often there's different ways of doing that, because everyone has a different learning technique, be that working side by side with someone and taking them through, or having a clearly defined written instructions or visual instructions to follow through. So again, it's all tailoring down to the needs of the individual to facilitate excelling at what they do. I'd like to now bring in Paul, who is a colleague who is going to talk to us a little bit about his experiences in Fujitsu as a person with autistic spectrum condition. Hello, Paul. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Paul Clayton, and I'm autistic, and I've worked for Fujitsu for 16 years.
Thanks, Paul. So how did your diagnosis come about?
Well, over the years, I knew I had issues. I've always had issues trying to socialize with people, which is where which is the sort of main autistic issue I have. And I've seen various psychologists and psychiatrists, but none of them had a clue that I was autistic. And it was only back in 2007 when I was talking to the employment assistance program that they suggested I was autistic, and I went out and got a diagnosis.
And initially you were reluctant to share this with your colleagues, weren't you? But what sort of made you change your mind about sharing that?
Because I realised that I tended to clash with people, and I felt they'd better understand me if they knew that I was autistic. So I sort of started off firstly speaking to somebody in HR, and then I shared it with my line manager, and then eventually shared it with colleagues. And then the colleague would understand me and know how to react to me. And things like when I was talking too much, they'd use sort of signals to tell me to sort of pipe down or whatever.
Absolutely. So yes, when you transferred from one account to another account over in DNS, I gave a talk to your colleagues, didn't I? So did that change your colleagues' attitudes towards you and help you in the workplace?
Yeah, and also I before I came back to work in DNS, I was working on the post office account, and I managed to arrange through Access to Work both somebody to come in and talk to my colleagues and explain what it is to be autistic, and also got some personal tutoring through the same company that was all paid for by the government.
Yeah, that's very good. Obviously you've transferred into DNS, as you said. So what sort of adjustments have been put in place that have helped you in the workplace, would you feel, Paul?
When I'm very busy and need to concentrate, I tend to use headphones and listen to music. That helps me, and that's probably the biggest help I've got.
Yep. But you've also had, I think, supporting one-to-ones and elements around. Certainly, do you feel you've had clear direction on work tasks and things, on what your expectations are? That's if I don't know, if I'm not sure what I'm doing, I'll always talk to the person who's managing me at the time. It's important because not always, I mean, you're my line manager, but I don't actually work for you. Absolutely, you have a different assignment manager. That's the complications.
It's important that the assignment manager also knows that I'm autistic and knows how to handle me.
Yeah, so it's maintaining that conversation, and as I was saying, it's making sure that the adjustments are tailored to the individual's needs. So thank you, Paul. I think that's very helpful. I'll hand back to Berta, please.
Thank you all, and thank you for sharing your personal experiences and the work we've been doing. We've got some questions. I think the first one is for James, and the question is, how are the stats put together? I've never been asked on any kind of survey whether I am autistic or not. How do we actually know that there is 27% employment? And are there any plans to collect this data in a more robust way? James, do you want to take this?
Yeah, so it's a really, really interesting question, and sort of trying to get a representative sample is a challenge in any research study, as the person highlighted. So previously we used to rely on a statistic which wasn't particularly representative. Apologies, just accidentally put myself on mute there. We previously relied on a statistic which was based entirely on self-report, and that wasn't helpful. Actually, this survey from the Office of National Statistics is really, really helpful because it's part of a wider data set which is collected by the government. And what they do is they randomly sample every households across the UK to get an understanding of the picture in terms of employment more generally. And since they've started doing that, they've also started asking if when the person completes that form, if they're autistic. So actually, this is quite a good way of getting an understanding of the employment rate for autistic people, and it's really good that the government have added this. What we don't know, of course, is the two potential confounding factors are whether or not people are openly disclosing the fact that they're autistic, or, of course, we know that there's a large number of adults who are currently not diagnosed and who may not be aware that they're autistic, and so there might be some people who are completing that form and who are in employment who we don't know are autistic. But it's still a very useful figure, and it really does help us it does indicate to us that we've got a lot of work to do to try and ensure that autistic people do have access to employment, because we know those who are in work are very much valued by their colleagues.
Thank you, James. So we have another question, which I think is for Robin, not Rob, actually, sorry. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how to create a culture to embrace autistic talent across all colleagues. I think you already covered that, Rob, but do you want to just pick that quickly?
Yep. No, I think what you should try to do is actually showcase and highlight to the senior leadership team. So we've been very lucky within Fujitsu that Paul Patterson, our CEO, has really bought into supporting diversity and inclusion. And we've run the events with CRAE, and we've showcased people, and we've done events where a day in the life of. So Paul starred in that, where he explains the day in the life of Paul, and also the fantastic way that during lockdown he was able to perform, whereas a lot of people who don't have a neurodiverse condition really struggled in lockdown. People on the autistic spectrum actually soared. So, you know, we've mentioned about that, and talk openly about it. You know, I speak to Paul regularly and other people and chat to them when we're actually in the office. And by doing that, again, you're including people, you know, you're just treating them as everybody else. And then people see you, what you call it, doing that, and then it actually snowballs. But highlight and actually say, and if you're within your business, we know you've got this role, etc. Why don't you have X to come and work for you? Because they've got really good skills in that. And then that actually again snowballs. So he's holding events, doing educational, like webinars, talking about it, and just tell the truth. Why wouldn't you want somebody who's high performing to actually work in your part of the business, so that makes your figures look better? And let's be brutally honest about it. We all like to good ourselves. So if your figures are looking good in that part of the building or the business, why wouldn't you? So I hope that's answered the question.
Thank you.
Berta, I guess just as well from me, I think as Rob mentioned, I think it does need to come from the top down. You do need to have your leadership team bought into it. You know, we've been on, I guess, this responsible business journey for probably about 10 years now within Fujitsu. And if I'm perfectly honest, when we first started out, I did think it was just a tick in the box exercise. But you know, obviously it wasn't, and it's something that is, you know, very passionate from the leadership down. And I think without that support, you know, the plans will fall flat, unfortunately. You do need that senior leadership, and once you can see that they're bought into it, you know, it really resonates down to all of the employees as well. So, and I think that's the case now within Fujitsu, as Rob mentioned. You know, everybody can be completely you within the organisation and can have these open and honest conversations. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you. I think we have another question for you, Craig. And so the question is, were there any barriers when getting the partnership off the ground?
No, I think fortunately, you know, it's something that we've been doing for a number of years now. We kind of obviously had a clear strategy when we started out. We've stuck to that strategy. And then, as mentioned, you know, other areas of it have been quite organic. You know, we've worked quite closely together to see how things can develop. But as any good plan, you do need that strategy to start out with. So yeah, I think it's worked fantastic. And I forgot to mention actually that it is the first time that we've actually extended a partnership. So normally the partnerships would end after 2 years. Autistica were put back into the employee vote again, and were selected by our employees for another further 2 years, which again, you know, I think just shows how important the partnership means to our employees, you know, to continue that on, which is fantastic. So.
Thank you, Craig. I was on mute. Still not getting used to these virtual events. Let me just check. The next question is for Rob. So Rob, what are the most requested accommodations in general? Are they physical accommodations such as hardware, furniture, or human process accommodations?
Oh, that could either be a really easy one or a really hard one. There isn't. It's across the board. Everybody's individuals. So some people want hardware. So they might want bigger screens. They might want a special sort of keyboard or mouse or rollerball. Certain software such as JAWS or Dragon. Being able to have the blinds drawn in an office. It's totally across the board. And the best thing about it is it's not just people with a neurodiverse condition. This is for everybody, so that we've got in place our workplace adjustments. And the one thing I would say is if you can have an external organisation, somebody like Diversity and Accessibility to do the assessment, they actually then have the right people who may suggest something to the individuals that they haven't considered. And it could be something that actually really helps them. Because in the past within Fujitsu, it was a case of where the line manager might suggest something. Well, I'm a line manager. I don't know what people need. I can only make a suggestion. So we've actually brought in a third party of specially trained assessors to actually support people. And again, it then enables them to perform to the best of their abilities. And it can, some of them can be, no cost options. So, and you get support from the government with access to work, etc. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. I think we have James who wants to speak now.
Yes, hi, thanks, Rob. That was really interesting. Just to also say that one of the things that we are doing as part of the research that we're doing with different organisations is trying to gather data on what sorts of requests and reasonable adjustments that people make. And if you head to our website, you'll see the DARE website, you'll see a list of the different reasonable adjustments that people are making. And we're, as I understand it, the research team at University College London are just in the process of preparing a research paper which will be out soon, which will detail that in further detail, and we'll be sharing more information on that soon too.
Thank you, James. We have another question for Craig. Did you get senior sponsorship for the work you have done with Autistica, and how was this communicated? How did you get the buy-in?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the responsible business strategy that was put in place was kind of signed off by the senior leadership team. So we have our responsible business board that meets every, I think it's 6 weeks. So that's chaired by the CEO of the company. So and then it's rolled. All of the attendees of the meeting are the senior leadership team. So yeah, in terms of senior buy-in, Paul Patterson has obviously met with James as well on numerous occasions. So yeah, it is supported from the top down really. So we have an internal web page, kind of communicating stuff that we're doing, and we also send out emails, etc. to staff. We've also got charity champions based at pretty much all of our sites. Unfortunately, obviously, we're not in the sites at the moment, but when we are in the offices, we've got charity champions that kind of help and communicate activities that we're doing and fundraisers, etc. So,
thank you, Craig. We have another question for Rob. You're quite popular today, Rob. Do you have any advice for managing employees' personal data? Is it helpful to get detailed information if someone considers themselves to have a disability, including neurodivergent folks? Just to add to that, so the DARE survey we run is it's confidential. It's hosted within the UCL database, so we don't share any confidential information with our corporates. So we analyze this data really carefully just to make sure that we don't share any data that could potentially identify individuals within a company unless they are willing to. So yeah, Rob, I'll leave this to you now.
So we collect data in 2 ways. So first of all, within our HR system, we have a capture in there if somebody wants to declare that they're disabled, and that just enables us to actually provide to the government when they request how many people do we employ that have a disability. So that is there, and it's non-attributable to everybody. It just gives a total of how many people we have that have a disability. Now, the Be Completely You passport, we've worked with HR and the legal advice team to ensure that we're doing that in the correct way, because we don't want to have any GDPR breaches, etc. And the person who owns the passport actually owns that data, and they're actually empowered to who they want to share it with. And you don't have to put it, you don't have to have one. It's offered to everybody, and you can put as little or as much data in there. But what we have found is people would rather put the information in there so it's captured, so that your new line manager, as you move roles, etc., understands what your workplace adjustments are and who you are. And it's there as a tool, but you don't have to do it as such. But it does allow with our HR people to actually get support. And sometimes if you have the passport, your line manager, they can actually then support you more, have more open conversations. And communication is a great method of removing barriers and understanding. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Rob. So we have another question. I think that's from me. And so that's around, are there any services available that can come into workplace and support organizations become autistic friendly? I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about DARE. There are different projects out there that focus around neurodiversity and workplace. However, there's a lack of evidence-based projects. So at Autistica, that's why we created DARE. So DARE is one of the options that would run an independent external audit within your company to analyze and see what processes you have in place and what can you potentially improve. And so most importantly, as I said, all the data is confidential. And so DARE, for example, you can phase out DARE. So the first phase would be the survey, and then the second one would be around training, and then the other one would be around bespoke advice. And that's what we're doing with Fujitsu, and so far it's working great. So that's in terms of DARE. Do you have any other services in place, Rob, that apart from DARE? Not that I'm aware, but
we work with Purple Space, which supports people with disability and neurodiverse conditions. We also get external speakers in, and we also talk to our members, and if they suggest somebody who could help and support, again, we would explore and possibly bring those in to help. And we have diversity and accessibility, who are the specialists for suggesting support. So if you want a workplace adjustment, it's not just emphasis on the individual to request it. And it's not a request because the request is something that you have to ask for, you're entitled to it. It could be that the line manager thinks, do you know what? Rob actually could do with some help in this. I'm going to actually get Rob assessed to help him, or it could be HR or occupational health. And what people need to realise is it's not a case of, oh, you're going to see occupational health or workplace adjustments to be assessed. It's not a negative experience. It's there to support you. It's not a case of, oh, we're coming in to measure you, etc. It's like, what can we do to help you work better and be better supported so you feel included and you can be completely you at work? So again, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. We have a question for Robin. How do you ensure that workplace adjustments are a partnership between the line manager and the autistic person, rather than the emphasis is being on the person themselves to speak out for support?
So as Rob was highlighting, the Be Completely You passport is a sort of document of trust that's written between the individual and their line manager, and we use if needed, we'll use occupational health to add some gravitas around the adjustments that the individual requires. So it's very much is a partnership, and what we're trying to do a lot of work on is ensuring that the line managers have all the information they need and access to that to provide all of the adjustments for the individuals.
Thank you. And the last question, because I'm aware we have like 2 more minutes, is for Rob. And what are the biggest challenges in integrating autistic employees, please?
I think I'm hogging the conversation here. I apologise for that. Right, the biggest barriers is not the person with a neurodiverse condition. It's everybody else. And some line managers are good and some line managers are bad. And that goes across the board. And it can be a lack of understanding. So I do coaching and speak to line managers, but I also mentor and coach people with neurodiverse conditions to actually empower them to take ownership of that relationship so that they can take it forward and they can decide what they want. Because it's not for me to say, right, we need to do this, this and this. We work in partnership together so that they can take control of the relationship with the line manager or the individual. And in some cases, as with everybody else, because we're all individuals, it's beneficial for them to move line managers. Because you may not get on with that individual. And I know what you're all thinking, you know, I'm an ex-crusty old RSM and I'm actually very approachable, but some people actually, you know, may not want me to be their manager. And we do move people around, and people are like a big box of Lego. Other building bricks are available and you can go in and you can move people around, etc. and you can make what you want. So again, I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. Does anyone have anything else to add? Something that we might have missed? No, that's good. So I'm just going to add my email here, and I know we've added the DARE page. If you've got any questions about Autistica or DARE, or how can your company embrace neurodiversity, attract and retain neurodiverse talent, please do not hesitate to contact us. And thank you all again, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.